Monroe Street United Methodist Church is the oldest Protestant congregation in Toledo. Our stained glass windows continue to attract visitors from all over the country as they admire the artistry and the messages projected by the windows. In this presentation, we share with you an explanation of each window. Monroe Street Church was founded in 1825 in the home of Noah Whitney. There were two church buildings at Monroe and Auburn in 1859 and 1891. The congregation moved to this new site in 1925, and the present sanctuary was dedicated in 1955. Beginning with the narthex, this window depicts the triumphant Christ. It was designed by a man named Christie after World War II. In the center is Christ stepping out of the horrors of war. Along the sides are evidences of Christ's triumph. You'll see close-up slides of these sections shortly. Notice Christ in the center is in the form of a cross outlined by beading, towering above the devastation of war. There are many interpretations of the various colors and symbols, and many forms of crosses around the window edge, as well as color designs. Notice the area to the left of center. There are soldiers, buildings in flames, refugees, all products of the war. Below the center figures are stars. The number 8 can be symbolic for regeneration. The gold star could signify the Gold Star Mothers of the war. On the other hand, 4 stars plus the 8 could stand for the 12 disciples. This is one example of several interpretations. You can read into it whatever you think is most appropriate. Below is a prone body with 2 grieving women. The skull at the feet of the cross can represent Adam and the sins of mankind, with the blood of the Lamb of God washing away the sin. Notice there's a sword as well as a green serpent, the symbol of the devil and death and destruction. There also are 2 men representing the begging, starving humanity. This slide depicts the top of the window with Jesus Christ the victor. There is the symbol for Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. The tri-radiant nimbus surrounding Christ's head actually has a cross in it, but part of it is behind his head. While other figures may have halos, only the deity has the tri-radiant nimbus. There are 4 stars present. These may represent the 4 apostles or the 4 directions of Christ's influence. This shows the entire window again so you can get it in perspective once more. Notice the many crosses, circles for eternity, and triangles for the Trinity. The 4 sides of the squares could represent the apostles. Now we'll start looking at the evidence of Christ's victory along the outside edges of the window. Here we have the imprisonment of the early Christians who were willing to go to jail and even death for their faith. Notice that one man carries a small Latin cross. On the right side, you'll see monks who, over a period of 1,000 years, devoted their lives to translating the Bible. The middle left side of the window portrays John Wesley, the leader of the Holiness movement. Notice the horse and saddlebags, a symbol of the pioneer preacher in America. The circuit rider who went from community to community, starting schools and churches. He carries a red book with a cross, the Bible. The middle right-hand side of the window portrays Martin Luther, the symbol of the Reformation. It emphasizes the priesthood of the common man and the Bible as the source of authority. There's a pen on the left and a rostrum on the right, indicating Luther was both a writer and a speaker. On the left, the little red schoolhouse with boys and girls entering. This stands for the Pioneer Schools. In the middle are three symbols of united faith. There is Moses, representing the Jewish faith, St. Francis on the right, representing Catholicism, and the Bible in the center, representing Protestantism. On the right, there's the meeting place, a log cabin. This was the residence of a settler near 10 Mile Creek in Toledo, where Monroe Street Church was founded. You can see the settlers on their way to worship. On the lower left is the Emancipation Proclamation, in which Lincoln proclaimed the freedom of all slaves. Notice the slave with the broken chains. On the right is the 19th Amendment, stating the enfranchisement of American women. There are two women standing, one crouching with her arm outstretched. In the center, the World Court of the United Nations. This symbolized the nations of the world coming together to try to find a substitute for war. The General Assembly building is on the right of the office building. There's the Empire State Building on the left and the Chrysler Building on the right. Farther to the left is additional evidence of an attempt to find a solution to war, the symbol of science, and to the right, the symbol for the World Council of Churches. In summary, some experts call this window one of the finest contemporary stained glass windows in the world. This Gothic chapel was designed by Carl Britsch, who was a member of this church. The central window represents the trial of Christ, the crucifixion and resurrection. We'll see close-ups of these subjects, but first, notice the overall plan. On the top left are the words, Christ is. Then, in the center are the words, risen from, and on the right the words, the dead. There is an angel of resurrection. Below on the left are the reed, whip, and scourge with which Jesus was tortured in the courtyard. On the right is the cross, draped with a robe. There is the Alpha Omega symbol for the beginning and the end. In the center is the dawn, the sunrise. You'll see the words, I am the resurrection and the life. The arrows might make a form of the St. Andrew's cross. Red could be for zeal or blood, the violet for humility and suffering. This is not really Christ being judged by Pilate. Notice the figures are placed so that Christ towers above Pilate. More like Christ is the judge. Below is the pitcher or vase with which the chief judge washed his hands. The crucifixion, INRI, Latin for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The resurrection. Notice the lily, the symbol of eternal life and piety. There also is a shamrock for the Trinity. The patriotism or citizenship window to the left of the chapel. In the center, Abraham Lincoln with the caption, with malice toward none and charity toward all. This represents the bringing together of the blue of the North and the gray of the South. Below is the Great Seal of the United States, the emblem of service. To the left are the Pilgrims and the Mayflower leaving Holland. On the right are the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock, putting their feet on New England soil for the first time. This is a closer look at the Pilgrims. Look at the expression on Lincoln's face. Also, you will notice a heart that possibly stands for love or sacrifice. Here is Plymouth Rock. Now we go to the right side of the chapel. The Christian home window was designed to emphasize the concept of the Christian home and family. In the center is the Holy Family with Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Below is the spinning wheel and candle representing the church and family. The spinning wheel also was a symbol used by Mahatma Gandhi. On the left is the marriage in Cana of Galilee, where Jesus performed a miracle by turning water into wine. This is taken to mean that homes are transformed by the presence and spirit of Christ. On the right is the family engaged in family worship around the table. This is a close-up of marriage in Cana. The Holy Family. The lantern and rod may stand for light, maybe betrayal. There's a Celtic cross. The circle is for eternity. The circle and cross signify the eternal result of redemption, brought to mankind by Christ. Family worship. The candle represents devotion. Now to the chancel. In the center is Christ the Redeemer. Below is the chalice and the wafer, which represent communion. Farther below, the Lamb reclining on the book of the seven seals. The fact that he's reclining shows that he is wounded. Notice the tri-radiant nimbus for the deity. There are many crosses. Some people have suggested that the blue squares make a form of the cross. There is the descending dove for innocence and purity of the Holy Spirit. This symbol must always include the three-rayed nimbus. The figure of Christ towering above represents the inspiration and light which he brings. This window was designed so that whoever worships here should be conscious of his shortcomings and the fact that Christ, through his example, death, and resurrection, transforms life from what it is into what God would have it be. On the left is Christ the teacher, teaching Nicodemus, one of the great rulers of his day and a leader of the Sanhedrin. The symbol at the top is an angel representing Christ, IHC, 3 letters of the Greek spelling of Jesus. Below is the pelican, the symbol of atonement. It was believed that she would draw her own blood to feed her young in time of famine. This window is to show that there is always much more to learn and do in the way of service. This also is true of the Bible. There is always more to learn. On the right is Christ the healer. Blind Bartimaeus is kneeling before Christ, and Christ is opening his eyes. The angel above represents Christ. Chi Rho, the first 2 letters of the word Christ in Greek. Below is the phoenix. Out of destruction comes life. In summary, these 3 windows, it's hoped, will bring spiritual help, no matter what the need. We have Christ, the Redeemer from sin, the Master Teacher, a sober reminder that there is always more in need of doing and learning. Christ the Healer, bringing strength and courage to the weak and discouraged. Looking now at the windows on the right side of the chancel, the overall view of this window shows Daniel kneeling before an open window in defiance of the king. He's facing Jerusalem in his daily prayer. Next, we have Christ in Gethsemane after his struggle, saying, "Thy will be done." Farther over is George Washington, kneeling at Valley Forge, praying for freedom and for the country. This picture shows the need for prayer in national life. The bottom symbol is a censer for incense. You'll see the smoke in the word prayer. This window is in fact called the prayer window. Here is a closer view of Daniel. The word Daniel can also be seen. Near Christ you see Peter, James, and John sleeping. There's a cup symbolizing Jesus' prayer of, "Take this cup from me, nevertheless, thy will, not mine, be done." The ivy represents faithfulness. Here again is Washington and the words Valley Forge. This is the praise window designed to emphasize the necessity of thanksgiving and praise. One panel pays homage to the Negro spiritual, one of America's great original contributions to music. Next, we see the shepherds, listening in awe to the song of the angels on Christmas Day. Then the cherub choir represents the singing of praise by choirs. The bottom symbol of praise has trumpets and flutes forming the IX symbol for Jesus. Here is a closer look at the spiritual panel. Note the banjo, also the lettering that says spiritual. Here are the shepherds. There are stars, probably representing heavenly wisdom. Then you see angels, sheep, and the flower that looks something like a fleur-de-lis, used as a symbol for Mary or the Holy Trinity. There's the cherub choir. The harp is a frequently used symbol for music rendered in praise of God. This is the missionary window. It shows Christ talking to some young people about their life work. Then Christ blessing the children. And three outstanding Christians, George Washington Carver, Albert Schweitzer, and Toyohiko Kagawa. The bottom symbol has two churches, one native and one Gothic, with a Celtic cross over it. The Celtic cross, with the circle, represents the eternal redemption of man by Jesus' death on the cross. The youth panel has the word youth. You see Christ asking them to devote their lives to God and to sharing with others. Here are Christ and the children. There are flowers, which may have some particular meaning. Red frequently means zeal, and violet means humility. They all have 3 leaves and petals, possibly for the Trinity. Among the missionaries, we see the great scientist Carver holding some peanuts. Schweitzer, who at age 30 studied to become a doctor and then served in Africa, and Kagawa, who served so faithfully in Japan. This window depicts childhood with mother and child in the center. The left panel is youth. Christ is in the temple discussing and asking questions of the doctors there. The right panel depicts Anna and Simeon in the temple, waiting for the word that the Messiah had come. They are bowing before the altar. The bottom symbol is probably myrtle for love. A close look at the youth panel. There's the Star of David. Here are the mother and child. There are 3 stars for heavenly wisdom, the pink dove probably for expectation of new life, the fleur-de-lis for the Virgin Mary, the rose for purity, the lily for immortality or purity. Notice the groups of 3, possibly some meaning there. This is the age panel, the Star of David, and some doves for sacrifice. The Peacemaker's window shows Christ the Prince of Peace. On the left are Lot and Abraham settling their dispute by arbitration according to Genesis. In the center is Christ as a towering figure. Behind him are the forms of a white and an oriental soldier, enemies in World War II. To the right you'll see the figure of a blacksmith, smashing the swords and making plowshares, as the prophetic vision of the coming peace. The bottom symbol is the dove of peace and an olive branch. You see the words Lot and Abram on this panel. Here is Jesus Christ the Peacemaker with a dove above. There also is a rose for purity, more olive branches, and below are shamrocks representing the Trinity. The words swords into plowshares. Now we are at the front of the sanctuary to the left of the chancel. This is the evangelism window. First, we see the prodigal son being welcomed by his father. In the center is Christ with a lantern and a shepherd's crook, the symbol of the guidance and inspiration of life. To the right is a group of disciples in the upper room, praying and awaiting the Spirit of Pentecost. The symbol at the bottom is the candle and the open Bible, the symbol of evangelism. The candle represents devotion and/or Christ, the light of the world. With the prodigal son, we see the pink dove again, the symbol of humility. With Christ, we see the 3 stars for heavenly wisdom, shamrocks below representing the Trinity, roses and leaves all in clusters of 3. The leaves probably are intended to be ivy for faithfulness. In this panel showing the upper room, we again see the descending dove, indicating the presence of God. This is the service window. The symbol at the bottom is an ox with a yoke, the essence of strength, patience, and service. The tradition is that he was ready either to be slaughtered or to carry the burden. To the left is the Good Samaritan ministering to the man who lay wounded beside the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. In the center is Christ washing the feet of the disciples. You'll see a Greek cross. On the right are the pioneers clearing a forest. The idea of the service window is that others have labored, and we also have entered into their labors. Notice the shamrocks or clover, symbol of Trinity, near the Good Samaritan. Here you see Christ and the disciples. Among them are Peter, who denied him, and Judas, who betrayed him. Again, a Greek cross. Here's another picture of the hard-working pioneers. The Christian Women's Window honors WSCS Christian womanhood. On the left are Jesus, Mary, and Martha in Bethany. Mary has anointed his feet with oil and wiped them with her hair. In the center, you see the women before the tomb of Jesus. They were the first to discover that Jesus had risen. To the right is the pioneer mother, not often honored. She was a vital factor in the establishment of the frontier. The overall symbol for the window is at the bottom, a woman sitting in a chair with a child in front of her. The words say Christ and women. The scene in Bethany. Here is the tomb and the words at the tomb. Again, you see the same 3-leaved plants we've noticed before. There are different biblical accounts of these women. One account mentions Mary, the mother of James, Mary Magdalene, Salome, or Gianna. Some accounts merely refer to the women. Notice the flower that looks like a heart. The words say simply, the pioneer. This is the stewardship window. On the left is Christ the carpenter, working in his father's carpenter shop in the presence of Joseph and Mary. In the center is Jesus looking down at a steward who is examining his books. The idea expressed here is that we should give an account of our stewardship and what we do with that which God has entrusted to us. On the right is Christ looking down upon a conference between employers and workers, representing the possibility of bringing about peace and goodwill in industry. The symbol is a torch and a money bag, symbolizing our witnessing for Christ, the torch, and our use of our talents, the bag. Christ the carpenter. Again, the bag of money represents talents. The conference. This is the ecumenical window, sometimes called the religious unity window. On the left are the children of Israel 3,000 years ago. Under the leadership of Moses, they gathered together and sacrificed a paschal lamb. They took the blood and sprinkled it upon their doorposts, and then wearing hats and holding staffs, they started out on their journey to freedom. In the center, we see symbolized the World Council of Churches in Evanston, where leading denominations of Greek and Protestant churches came together, federating a new power for unified Protestantism. Kneeling together and participating in communion, they pledged allegiance to a unified Christ who desired a unified world. The two candles signify the dual nature of the Lord. On the right is Christ administering the Last Supper in the upper room before Gethsemane and the cross. The symbol at the bottom has different hands, all reaching together for the chalice. This is just a closer look at the sacrifice of Passover. Again, in the World Council of Churches panel, we see the two candles. Notice the small red design that makes a cross similar to one used throughout the windows. There also is a Celtic cross. The Last Supper. Notice the design of crosses on the floor, St. Andrew's crosses. The windows were made by the Pittsburgh Stained Glass Company. Howard Wilbert was the artist. He was asked to use the blues and reds found in the windows of the well-known Riverside Church in New York. Riverside had, in turn, tried to obtain an effect similar to that of the Chartres Cathedral in France. There are 42 panels of stained glass in the sanctuary, narthex, and chapel. 28 directly portray some phase of the life of Christ. The rest are symbols and applications of the principles and spirit of Christ applied to daily life.